This is the Bema Podcast with Marty Solomon. I'm his co-host, Brent Billings. Today I'm with Elle Grower Fricks to fulfill the vow we made to the Lord. I swear by heaven that we shall investigate this passage. I swear on this land that we shall examine these words. And I swear by Jerusalem that we shall share our resources. I swear on my head.
No, Brent.
Did I read the wrong one?
Please, no.
Okay, let me try it again. Today I'm with Elle Grower Fricks to investigate Jesus' teaching on oaths.
Yes. There we go. We did it. That's a relief, especially because anything beyond this is from the evil one.
Oh, I think I misunderstood this passage.
Kind of a bummer. Okay,
Should have read more closely.
Set us all aright by reading verses 33 through 37 for us from Matthew 5.
In the LEB, again you have heard that it was said to the people of old, do not swear falsely, but fulfill your oaths to the Lord. But I say to you, do not swear at all, either by heaven, because it is the throne of God, or by the earth, because it is the footstool of his feet, or by Jerusalem, because it is the city of the great king. And do not swear by your head, because you are not able to make one hair white or black. But let your statement be yes, yes, no, no, and anything beyond these is from the evil one.
Amazing. Thank you. We've been looking through the Sermon on the Mount, looking at these teachings of Jesus, and popping them open to examine the rabbinic conversation, which was Jesus's milieu, through the Talmud, and seeing what differences and what similarities we can find in the teachings of Jesus. So we're going to continue to do that today, specifically on this teaching on oaths, which has some surprises in it. I think
among them, the fact that yes is repeated and no is repeated.
Yes. No.
I just confirmed it. It's just in the Greek manuscript. So I've never read a translation that, maybe I have, but I don't remember reading a translation where it repeats it. So that's fun to know.
We love to keep it literal. I think, there's a lot of context we're going to get into, but I do think that it's worth noting that sometimes we want to hunker down and be like, we believe in the Bible and we actually follow the Bible, which I do believe. But there's also this do we, especially when we carry around that chip on our shoulder, are there things which we, conveniently ignore? If you're in the public school system, we have pledges of allegiance. We make oaths in court. Our wedding ceremonies include oaths, which I challenge people to try to find a biblical example of outside of Sinai, which still doesn't use the word oath in it, by the way. There's folks in the military, there's folks in civic office, and I'm not saying that none of us can ever testify in court or whatever, or else we've broken the law of Jesus. But I think it's a good posture of humility before we get into all the context. If tend to be a person who says, I believe in doing what the Bible says, it's black and white, it's not complicated, to take a little dose here, practice some expansiveness as we lean in toward this text and start learning. And also shout out to Quakers and Mennonites and other people who historically have followed this rule, literally at great personal cost.
Yeah, and on a practical side for me, it's just a cumbersome intro if I have to do all of these oaths.
You did just flippantly break the law of our Lord. He died that you might live, and this is what you do. This is the content that you write.
Just trying to make it a little more engaging. Hopefully the listeners said no before you got to it.
Feel free to tell that to the Lord on Judgment Day. Oh, boy. Okay. So what was the rabbinic conversation around oaths? Well, there are a bajillion examples all through Talmud and other rabbinic literature of oaths showing up, and nobody is particularly upset by them. They seem to be fine. There's all different kinds and all different formulas, so much so that one academic said, for Jewish thought, oaths, in spite of their diversity, nevertheless formed such a unified whole that no Jewish hearer would have understood Jesus's admonition.
Okay.
Here are some common oath formulas that people utilized. By omnipotence, by the temple service, by the altar, by the covenant, by the Torah, by Moses, by life. And then it would be followed up by, I will not depart from here until I have redeemed him from captivity, or whatever kind of oath you're making follows one of those things.
Is there something to Jesus's particular list of by heaven, by earth, by Jerusalem, by your head?
Well, we'll see later, Brent.
All right.
What Marty used to say, you're close to the kingdom. He's quoting Ray. You're like 25 minutes ahead of me.
Okay.
Don't
all right.
worry about
Sorry.
it. Okay. So do they have any cautions about the dangers of oaths? Yes, there's a few, including around the book of Judges when Jephthah's daughter is murdered because of his dumb oath. Recall, we did an episode on that. But Tanchuma also says this: let not someone from Yisrael be reckless with vows, nor with laughter. That part's a bummer. Nor to deceive another by an oath, saying that it is not an oath. In the king's mountain, there were 2,000 cities, and they were all destroyed because of a truthful oath, which was unnecessary.
What about reckless with oaths for the sake of laughter?
I mean,
I need a loophole at this point.
Do you want to destroy 2,000 cities? Which ones? Where's the king's mountains? Okay, so if that's the Talmudic literature, that's not super enlightening, right? It's like, okay, Jesus is going hard against the grain. Why? What's going on? And additionally, what stands out as odd or unexpected about this commandment from a biblical perspective? Anything pop to mind? Are there oaths made in the Tanakh?
I mean, surely?
Surely, indeed, there are. It's common, in fact, one might say. We have different kinds. We have the word promise versus the word oath. Just like we have different kinds of curses, by the way, but that's a different episode. But in general, they're still scattered around everywhere. So let's look at a list just confined to the book of Bereshit, the book of Genesis.
I'm questioning everything because you made a comment earlier, maybe offhandedly, about how I think it was the marriage oath is not, like it's not actually there the way we think it is. So I'm like, I don't even know anything anymore.
Well, think about biblical marriages. That's also a different episode. But, think about Rivka and Yitzhak.
Yeah. I mean, do you want to come with me? Sure. Yeah. I guess that's not an oath. I don't know.
Okay. Well, let's not horrify our audience too much and throw everybody else off into the spinning whirlpool, which I guess is my fault. So I will own that. But looking at Genesis here, just at where do we find oaths if not in Rachel and Yaakov and Yitzchak and Rivka, etc.? In Genesis 21, it says that Avimelech makes Abraham take an oath. And then in chapter 24, Abraham makes Eliezer swear an oath. So maybe he learned from him. Genesis 25, Esav makes an oath when he sells his birthright to Yaakov. In Genesis 25, Avimelech makes Yitzhak swear when they're settling their will dispute. In Genesis 31, Lavan initiates an oath when he's settling the dispute with Yaakov. And then in Genesis 47, Yosef is made to swear to his dying father that he will take his bones back. Kind of implies a dispute there, as if Yosef might just stay in Egypt forever, right? We've got that push and pull between Pharaoh and Yaakov that's going on in the story. And so there's a pattern there. Does anything stick out about it to you?
I mean, the patriarchs are pretty into it. I was expecting some oaths from the Lord to appear and did not.
Mm-hmm. In fact, in Genesis 50, Yosef is describing God promising the land to Abraham, and he uses the word for oath, but God never actually uses that word whenever he's the one talking to the patriarchs.
Interesting.
Indeed, indeed. So what I note about this pattern is all of these moments in these stories are jammed up against sections where there are disputes, right? We have Avimelech and Abraham. Avimelech is mad at Abraham because he's been carrying out his Bonnie and Clyde thing with Sarah and not telling him who he is. And then God curses the whole house. And then Avimelech finds out and is mad, right? Esav is grappling with Yaakov. there's this dispute over the wells. Lavan and Yaakov are definitely going at it over a long period of time. So it's almost like Jesus is saying, don't even get into the place where you need to resolve things via oath in the first place. Like, don't let your relationship degrade with another person enough through failures of integrity that they need an extra level of commitment to say that you are going to hold to the things that you are saying. Don't be in a dispute with the father of the king. Don't battle with your siblings. Don't get into disputes over land. Don't get in decades-long fights with your father-in-law.
This is not exactly the same kind of dispute, but this somehow, like, I don't even understand how Darius has come up with this, and now Torrance started to do it sometimes too, where we'll be in an argument about something, and he'll be like, 2 + 2 = 5. I was like, no, buddy, it's actually 4. He's like, no, Dad, it's 5. I was like, Darius, it's 4. Trust me. I've been doing this math thing for a long time. It's 4. He's like, no, Dad, I promise it's 5. It's like, what?
Why are you layer?
Where did you even get that?
Yeah.
So is that the same kind of like idea?
I think
obviously
so.
The stakes are very different than what we're maybe talking about with some of these stories, but
right. I think that's the idea. Like, you're not taking him at his word. And so he's adding an extra layer of gravitas to his words to be like, I am serious.
Which, that swear by heaven, like, yeah, that seems weighty.
Yeah. Yeah, it sure does. I really want to make a joke about like heaven being in the sky, and so it's not actually weighty, but I'll go right on past that opportunity.
Very thin air up there.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe that's what Jesus is pointing to biblically. But I still think that this would have rankled the original listeners. If that's all there is, if that's the full cultural context, is this is fully normative to do. And Jesus says, well, don't. They go back and look at their Torah and are like, well, maybe, I think there's another piece here. And when we've run out of biblical perspective and we've run out of rabbinic perspective, the third perspective always has got to be the Greco-Roman cultural context.
Checks out.
Indeed. Jesus's world is always a confluence of this Hellenistic culture and the first century Jewish culture slamming into each other and reacting against one another constantly, right? So oaths are definitely a thing in the Greco-Roman world. They show up absolutely everywhere and occur with great frequency. So here are the steps for a Hellenistic oath if you want to do something, quote unquote, of the evil one.
I mean, I tried it. It didn't work very well.
Well, you missed some steps, so hopefully you're still okay. Step number 1, you got to kill an animal and or pour out a libation.
Okay.
Hide your pets.
I mean, I would go with the libation, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. Step 2, you've got to claim a god as witness and as protector of the oath, which we'll return to in just a sec. And then step 3, the oath is stamped with finality by the inclusion of curses. So that God as witness and protector in the second place is protecting that curse outcome, making sure that it's actually happening.
Like, here's what you got to do, and if you don't, here's what's going to happen.
Yes.
Like spelling out the consequences ahead of time.
Right. And may Apollo make it so. That's the idea. So right. I actually have some...
That's your god of choice, I take it?
I don't know. Well, I've been reading some Iliad, which I'm going to share today. Okay. So, he's in the pantheon. So Iliad is from 8th century BC, Iron Age. And so it's before the time of Jesus, but it's going to be even more relevant in a hot sec. So anyway, easy, accessible thing to go and check. Here's a quote from the Iliad, and we'll see if those steps pop up. He spoke and cut the lambs' throats with the pitiless bronze and laid them on the ground, gasping and failing of breath, for the bronze had robbed them of their strength. Then they drew wine from the bowl into the cups, poured it out, and made prayer to the gods who are forever. And thus would one of the Achaeans and the Trojans say, Zeus, most glorious, most great, and you other immortal gods, whichever army of the two will be first to work harm in defiance of the oaths, may their brains be poured out on the ground, just as this wine is, theirs and their children's. and their wives will be made to serve others. So we've got slaying of a random animal, right? Not appropriate Torah slaughter practices, BT dubs. And then we have the libation. They pour out wine on the ground. And then they invoke a god specifically, and they ask Zeus to protect the oath. And then the inclusion of a curse there: may their brains be poured out on the ground like this wine. So he's the one who has to make sure that that happens.
So why would it not always be Zeus? Are they making judgments and saying like, well, this is important to me, but I don't think Zeus is going to care about this, and so I'm going to go with somebody who has a little bit more time?
Well, very monotheistic question of you, Brent. Like, just go to the big dogs. You've got household gods, right? You've got like a relationship with these different deities, which you invoke for different things. Whether it's a household manner, then you might pick Hestia or Hera, right? If it's about your grain, then you might invoke one of the agricultural deities, right? So it depends on your issue. But of course, in the Iliad, it's like big armies fighting. And so you're bringing in your biggest guns. In later years, there's more identifying yourself with the killed thing. Right there, it says your brains are like the wine that gets poured out. But that keeps going. So sometimes they'd like disembowel an animal and hold the intestines or immerse their hands in its blood. And the idea is, this will be me if I break this oath. This is what will happen to me.
Like an evolution of the blood path covenant that we talk about with Abraham.
Yeah. But with different animals and with spoken words about that, including the actual curse. One more section here. It says, and if anything in this oath be false, this is a different oath about Perseus, if you know the story of the Iliad or you've seen the movie Troy or anything. If anything in this oath be false, may the gods give me many woes, all those that are used to give to anyone who sins against them in his swearing. He spoke and he cut the boar's throat with the pitiless bronze. Bronze is always pitiless, I guess.
Yeah, I was still wondering about that.
Yeah. And the body of the boar was whirled and flung into the great gulf of the sea to be food for the fishes. That one also invokes Zeus, and you have to cut off the hair of the boar first, and it's a whole thing. So, is there a passage in Scripture that Jesus could have had in mind when he may have been addressing this more Greco-Roman pattern of oath making? And if so, what would our tip-off be? Because that first, you have heard it said, you will not swear falsely, but pay your oaths to the Lord. That's more aligned with Leviticus 19, which says, you will not swear falsely by my name so as to profane the name of your God. I am the Lord. But as you keyed into so presciently earlier, Brent Billings, there's another reference in these verses that we can miss as just kind of hyperbole if we don't pay attention. Jesus makes this unnecessary list. He could have just said, don't do oaths anymore, and then moved on. But he makes this list of possibilities, which again are irrelevant since he said, don't do it. And I'm going to zoom in specifically on the either by heaven, for it is the throne of God, or by the earth, for it is the footrest of God, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. Pretty random, feels like. He could have even just said either by heaven or by earth or by Jerusalem, because they're not ours, right? And we know that already. But he goes beyond that, and he has these poetic reasons for these irrelevant oath examples. Throne of God, footrest of God, city of the king. So, is there somewhere in Scripture that he's referencing for his Jewish listeners to catch? And I'm going to propose that that is Isaiah 66. So, if you could read for us Isaiah 66, verses 1 through 4, that would be lovely, Brent.
Thus says Adonai, heaven is my throne, and the earth is the footstool for my feet. Where is this house that you would build for me? And where is this resting place for me? My hand has made all these things, and all these came to be, declares Adonai. But I look to this one, to the humble and the contrite of spirit, and the one frightened at my word. The one who slaughters a bull strikes a man. The one who slaughters a lamb for sacrifice breaks the neck of a dog. The one who offers an offering, the blood of swine. The one who offers frankincense blesses an idol. Indeed, they themselves have chosen their ways, and their soul delights in their abhorrence. Indeed, I myself will choose their ill treatment, and I will bring them objects of their dread, because I called, and no one answered. I spoke, and they did not listen. But they did the evil in my eyes, and they chose that in which I do not delight.
Okay, that first verse, bing, bang, bong, we have each element. Only difference is we have house instead of city, but they're both thought to be the dwelling place of God, and we're actually going to come back to that in a hot sec. Okay, so we have heaven is God's throne, earth is God's footstool, and then house. So if Jesus is referencing this passage, why would that be? By nearly exactly quoting it, right? I think the offerings described in verse 3 way more closely match the Greco-Roman oath formula than a typical Levitical sacrifice, right? We have the slaughtering of animals, which are not kosher, right? We have a dog. Nowhere in Torah is that okay. You have swine, also a pagan animal, not okay to do. And then it's linked with the slaying of that animal being a meaningful symbol for striking a person, which we saw in the Iliad just a minute ago with the let it be as done to me, right? And there we have the one who slaughters a bull strikes a man. Then we have a libation offering of the blood of swine, not particularly a big feature in Leviticus.
No?
No. Followed by a reference to an idol, right? A pagan deity there.
Yeah,
So,
if Mary and Joseph knew their text when those magi showed up, they'd be like, ooh, awkward.
yeah, you guys are... and yeah, you guys are off script. But on the other hand, I mean, that was their law for them. So what's wrong with other people doing their thing, right? But okay, if Jesus is saying this radical commandment, no more oaths, after everybody's been making oaths for forever, I would have shot the eyebrows off the heads of the original listeners and given them a bunch of red flags. Like, wait, why? You're saying Abraham, our father, shouldn't have done what he did? And then Jesus tips them off, potentially by quoting this passage that he's actually talking about Hellenistic culture. So what if Jesus is telling it slant so that the Romans listening don't know that he's specifically talking about them? So it sounds like just another moral commandment in the midst of a whole bunch of moral commandments. And why might have Jesus had this particular big problem with Hellenistic oaths that he wants to feature it in the Sermon on the Mount and be happy to stop the Jewish culture of oath making along the way? Well, I've got some ideas. I've got some answers.
Would you like me to make a guess before we move on?
You certainly may.
Maybe this is addressing specifically the Herodians and their engagement in Greco-Roman culture and saying like, hey, it's one thing if you're going to, the arena or something, if you're going to the theater. It's another thing if you're making these oaths to these, evil things. Right.
Yes. Very good. It's not just like the legionary forces in the background keeping watch over the crowd that he's poking at. There's certainly Herodians in the crowd for sure. I want to talk about why individuals might have been making oaths, even if they're not, about to fight the Battle of Troy or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the central oaths that was big in this time and probably in their community are oaths of loyalty to the emperor. So we have these different stels in different communities from the first century. One is from Augustus and Paphlagonia, and it's from the year 3 BCE. And we have one from Tiberius in Cyprus in 12 AD or CE. And these oaths, or sacramentum, from which we get the word sacraments, were allegiance oaths, which listed the gods and often the emperor amongst them, and required the one making the sacrifice and the oath to pledge fealty to the descendants of the emperor as well as the emperor himself. Marty has talked before about how the emperor is often framed as the savior of the people making the oath, and sometimes even framed as the son of God. And it seems that there were both big inaugural oaths giving at the turning over of a new regime, but there were also sporadic oaths throughout the regime that were required. So by the 200s, emperors were requiring yearly loyalty oaths, especially from the military, but also from the community. And this is one of the reasons that in the early church, you had to quit the military to become a Christian. There was no like faith, family, and country. It was the opposite. You had to swear your allegiance to Adonai or to the state and to the emperor. And so, circling back to, well, why did he switch out house to Jerusalem, the city of the great king? It's might be another little tricksy tell it slant poke, because who lives in Jerusalem? Pilate didn't actually live there unless he had to travel into town for the pilgrimage holiday management problem. He actually lived most of the time in Caesarea Maritima. So Jerusalem wasn't the city of any Roman king. It's the city of David, from whom would come the true king, right? So it seems as if Jesus might be being political and engaged in some nonviolent resistance in a way that we just miss because we aren't thinking about the culture and the history.
I don't know if I told you about my trip to DC at all, Elle, but I went to the Museum of the Bible.
Okay.
And they had an exhibit on the Megiddo mosaic. Are you familiar with this?
No.
It was a church from the 200s, early 200s, that was funded by a Roman centurion. And they have all these inscriptions dedicating it to him and
nice.
Talks about all this stuff. But yeah, the idea of him being not just in the Roman military, but like a higher ranking member of it. And then also, out the back door, funneling money to these Christians to develop their community.
Yes.
It's pretty fun.
It is fun. All different ways to engage with the empire, right? Staying within and excising yourself from it, kind of like Vashti versus Esther. Absolutely. I'm looking at pictures of it now since you mentioned it, and it's pretty cool.
It is. It was super cool.
It's got fish on the floor. Love that.
Yeah. Yeah, they make a big deal out of the fish.
What kind of deal do they make?
They just, it's like the highlight feature of the mosaic.
What do they say about the fish?
I don't remember.
Well,
it was a while ago, Elle.
It was like 1 month. You were just there.
Shh, this episode comes out in April. That was like 5 months.
Okay. Well, these loyalty oaths, I do think that Jesus is answering a practical question for his people about hey, do we do this thing or do we not do this thing? And it seems to me that Jesus could be saying, don't do the thing, but make that the rest of your lifestyle, right? Become the people who don't make oaths and walk in your integrity and have your yes be yes and your no be no, so that when the Romans come and tell you it's time to call Caesar God, you can say, oh, no, we never do oaths, actually. It could be that kind of thing. It could be the dispute conversation from the biblical context that we looked at. But how is any of this practical for us today, Brent?
I mean, for me, it's just simplifying my intros for the podcast.
Because normally that's a really big problem for you.
It's a big problem.
Yeah. We don't tend to live in a culture that says stuff like, by omnipotence, let me not depart from here unless I have redeemed him from captivity.
Yeah. Different language, but I think, if we examine ourselves, we probably find ourselves doing these sorts of things.
I agree. And I have some examples to munch on together.
Okay.
So in those Greco-Roman oaths, like we talked about, there's a specific curse embedded, right? That's if I do not do X, Y, Z, let my intestines be torn out. That's a curse. And even the Jewish oaths have a flavor of that idea, even if they don't say it explicitly, right? They're saying if I don't redeem that guy from captivity, omnipotence will keep me from departing in some way. Because the phrase is, let me not depart from here. So what can we pull out from this? If those curses are implicitly or explicitly tying ourselves to a future that is not of God, but just of our own projection, right? We're making up something random that'll happen to us in the future if we don't do what we say we're going to do. And scripture is frequently against making proclamations about our future. That's the whole problem with divination in Torah. It's future based. Because who needs to trust God if you know that your future spouse is going to appear on the 5th day of spring or whatever the cloud reader or liver reader told you? Both of those forms.
Liver reader.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
dear.
I think I've talked about that before. Sheep livers.
Oh, sheep livers. I was thinking of my own liver. I'm like, what are they doing?
Leave your organs inside your body, preferably, unless you're Josh.
Yes, that's true.
He should have asked.
Josh
to do
should
a
have
reading.
asked for a liver reading. He's like, hey, after you get that out of there, can you just
see it? I have a pic so I can look at it. Okay. So those were really big things at that time. And if you look at the original Hebrew, it doesn't say like diviner or whatever. It says things like cloud reader. So cursing yourself via oath is a different kind of claim on something, the future, which does not belong to us to lay a hold of, right? If we say, like, if me or my husband divorce, may my house be burned. We can't do that because we don't know what marriage holds for us. Your spouse can end up being a con man or a serial killer. Happens not all the time, but it does happen. So that oath we've bound ourselves to is something that we just come up with to add gravity, like we talked about at first. The meaning of the word curse in Hebrew is binding. So when you say a curse, you're binding something to someone. In Greek, the word oath means fence or enclosure. So you're hemming yourself into something. And so are we our own to enclose ourselves within anything of our own creation? So how do we do this? I think we do it in a bunch of ways, but here's a couple that came to my mind. People say all the time, oh, I could never do that. It's like, really? God picked a random Jewish virginal teenager to bear God incarnate, but sure, you could never do public speaking. You're right. Or, oh, if someone asked me to XYZ, I would just faint on the spot or fall down dead, right? We're hemming ourselves in when we say stuff like that. We're tying ourselves to a future negatively because we have no idea what God is calling us to and what abilities he might gift us in or call us to develop along the way. But we still say things like, look, I know myself and I'm just not the kind of person to fill in the blank.
I don't like that, Elle.
This also happens, especially when people are pregnant. The kinds of things said to the parents are outlandishly terrible. I might even say fully pagan and fear-based. I heard just this week somebody say, don't you say that you want to the baby to come after this particular day because the baby will hear you and come early. It's like, what? Or another one that comes up all the time. Oh, he's going to be trouble. You better lock his doors at night or he'll be sneaking out for sure. Or like, oh, just wait till that person grows up. Stop it. What are we doing? And how are we talking about our spouses? That's just the way my husband always is. We do this about our churches. My church would never XYZ because they're so fill in the blank. It's not for us to bind ourselves or our kids or our spouse or anyone else to anything but God in the direction of his spirit. And I don't think it's for us to hem ourselves in against any future that God might have in store for us.
Well, I agree.
Okay, you were
Yeah, no, I was thinking of all sorts of personal examples. I was thinking of like, do we do this as a culture when we set like certain expectations for behaviors, or I mean, even something like as simple as like when you send somebody a text message, there's like a cultural expectation that you're going to get a response within a certain amount of time. And maybe that's a little bit longer, a little bit shorter, depending on exactly what part of the culture you're in. But is it like, as a culture, are we putting all this burden? Are we hemming ourselves into this pressure to do all these things? Is that anywhere within the realm of this, or would you call that an entirely separate issue?
The way that it feels to me like it links in is if we tell ourselves, if this person doesn't text back within an hour, that means they hate me or they're mad at me or our friendship is actually worthless.
Yeah.
Bringing some kind of future extrapolation that we don't actually know anything about that might not be future oriented, but it's still making a prediction that doesn't end up being wise or helpful when the person could just be in a meeting or 1,000 other things.
Yes. Good. Okay.
Okay, great. And if you think, none of those are particularly related, this all feels like hooey to me. First off, you can just think about the weightiness of words, and the way that God creates things and pulls them into being is through words. And we do the same thing, or we're invited to do the same thing through prayer, is also word based. And if you still feel like that's too mystical for me, go back to verse 37. Let your statement be yes, yes, no, no. And anything beyond these is from the evil one. I'm not saying I know exactly what doctrinal and theological conclusions to pull from that verse, but it does feel like Jesus is coming onto this idea harder than I am. And so come up with your own functional theory of what he's talking about and how much more seriously we should be taking the idea of our words and what we're doing by accident or on purpose. Read the book of James talking about the tongue, right? There's so many scriptures, Proverbs, and then come on back and say, you know what, I think that it's fine. After you do all that, if you still say you think you're fine, then okay. Between you and God.
I often think about Ephesians 4 and how forceful Paul is when he says, do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouth, but only what is helpful for building others up. And it's like, man, if we actually took that seriously, I mean, same thing with so many of Jesus' words. If we actually took him seriously and did this, it'd be a different kind of world, I think.
Yeah. Different life that we would live within. Maybe we would be more open to living by every word that comes out in the mouth of our shepherd.
I love it. Okay. I'm going to have to think about this one for sure. I have many things to reflect on.
It's a thinker. There are some communities who do take this kind of thing very seriously. I've run into them before by accident and been blessed learning from them, but he'll be like, no, don't say that. I'm like, what? Oh. So I'm certainly not, I don't have it together more than anybody else, but a good thing to think about in community.
Well, even if we have a different interpretation of how seriously to take these words, just being aware that other people take it more seriously or less seriously, and being open to understanding their interpretation and how they got to where they got to.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
imagine everyone complexly.
Yeah, it's good. Okay. Well, do you have any resources you want to drop on us, Elle? Not that I'm swearing by Jerusalem that we would share such resources, but...
Wow. You've learned nothing. Tragic. Everyone pray for Brent.
Please do.
But yes, most of them are related to this Greco-Roman stuff. And then a couple on loyalty oaths. So I have a little packet of light reading. That's mostly a joke because it's heavy reading, but academic reading.
Okay.
But for people who love that, you're welcome. All Merry right. Christmas in April.
Okay. Well, listeners can find those show notes in their podcast app or at BamaDiscipleship.com. And if you want to get in touch with us, you can use the website, the contact page there. We'll give you the most up-to-date way to get in touch with us whenever you happen to be listening to this episode. If you want to support the work we do, you can do that through the website. Everything we do is made possible by listeners who have joined us on this journey and want to be a part of what we're doing. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us on the Bama Podcast today. We'll talk to you again soon.
Bye. And if you could read verses 1 through 3 for us, Brent, of Isaiah 66, I would love that.
Not 1 through 4? Come back to 4?
Not come back for 4. I decided it's extra.
Extra. Okay. Thus says Adonai, heaven is my throne, and the earth is the footstool for my feet.
Oh, just kidding. I'm sorry. I do want 4. Sorry, I forgot I changed my mind. I went back and forth and forgot about the 4th. Did they include this in your special workshop on how to read the text? Like one of your co-hosts interrupts me after I've started.
No, but presumably most voice actors have a director saying similar things in their head. Wait. Do you want to do your lead in?
Sure.